All right, so get ready, because today we are diving deep into some pretty uncharted legal waters.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah, we're talking about the cases against former President and now President-elect Donald Trump.
Right. Wild, isn't it?
2 criminal cases are still pending. One's federal, focusing on, the efforts to overturn the 2020 election.
Right.
And the other is about all those classified documents, at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, both fascinating cases, and not just for the legal specifics, but also what they could tell us about presidential power and accountability, going forward.
And he's pleaded not guilty in both of them, but here's the twist, right? Trump won the 2024 election.
Yeah.
And that really throws everything into a whole new level of complexity because, conventional wisdom says that a sitting president can't be prosecuted.
Yeah, it sets up, kind of a potential conflict between 2 fundamental principles of our system, right? That everybody's equal under the law. But then also that the executive branch needs to be able to function without, undue interference.
Right. So where do we even begin to unpack this?
Oh, it's a lot.
Maybe with Trump himself. I mean, he hasn't been shy about his intentions, right? Last October, he told conservative radio host Hugh Hewitt that he'd fire Special Counsel Jack Smith, who is leading both of these investigations, within 2 seconds.
2 seconds.
Of taking office.
Wow. Bold statement. But, not necessarily surprising, given Trump's history of kind of challenging legal norms.
Right.
But this time, it's not just about rhetoric, right? This actually has real-world implications for how these cases could actually play out.
And according to the New York Times, Smith seems to be, taking that threat seriously,
Yeah.
Their reporting suggests that, he's trying to wrap up his investigations before Trump's inauguration, almost like a legal race against the clock.
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? It's like the strategic maneuvering on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about, legal arguments anymore. It's about timing. Public perception. Who makes the first move?
Yeah. So will Smith finish his investigations and maybe even issue reports detailing, his findings before Trump takes office?
Right.
I mean, that's
the big question.
That's the big question.
And if he does, what happens next?
Right.
I mean, imagine a detailed report outlining potential criminal activity by a sitting president.
Oh, wow.
I mean, the public reaction would be, it would be enormous.
Sure.
It would put immense pressure on Congress.
Yeah.
Potentially leading to calls for impeachment.
Right, even if those ultimately go nowhere.
Right, exactly.
And let's talk about that for a second, because impeachment is a political process, not a criminal one.
Right.
Even if Trump can't be indicted while in office, Congress could still take action if they believe he's committed treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors.
Right.
I mean, those are the grounds for impeachment laid out in the Constitution.
Exactly. And those terms they're deliberately broad, giving Congress, kind of considerable leeway in deciding, what exactly constitutes an impeachable offense.
Right.
And remember, this wouldn't be Trump's first rodeo with impeachment.
No.
I mean, the House of Representatives impeached him twice during his first term.
That's true, but in both those cases, he was acquitted by the Senate.
He was.
Would it be different this time around? Especially, with the added weight of a potential special counsel report detailing his actions.
That's the $1 million question.
It is.
It would depend on a lot of factors.
Yeah.
The specific evidence presented, the political climate, public opinion, to name a few.
Yeah.
But even if he's not convicted by the Senate, the process itself, it could be incredibly damaging.
Yeah.
It would dominate the news cycle. It would further polarize the country, and it could potentially cripple his ability to, govern effectively.
Right. And then, of course, there's the whole issue of presidential pardons, especially in the case relating to the 2020 election.
Right.
Could Trump even pardon himself if convicted?
Yeah, I mean, it's uncharted territory. It hasn't happened before in U.S. history.
Never.
I mean, the Constitution gives the president broad power to pardon federal crimes.
Mm-hmm.
But whether that extends to self-pardoning, it's, legal scholars have debated this for centuries.
Wow.
With no clear answer.
Yeah.
It would undoubtedly trigger a constitutional crisis, forcing the Supreme Court to weigh in on, the limits of presidential power.
So, okay, we've got potential pardons, the special counsel racing against the clock.
Right.
And the possibility of impeachment kind of looming in the background.
Unlooming, yeah.
What about the Mar-a-Lago documents case? Where does that fit into all of this?
Well, that case has taken a few twists and turns of its own.
It has.
Judge Eileen Cannon, who was appointed by Trump in 2020, initially dismissed the case.
Oh, wow.
But Special Counsel Smith appealed that decision, and it's now making its way through the courts.
And that brings us to Glenn Kirschner, a former prosecutor who's been a vocal critic of Trump. In a recent YouTube video, he predicted that Smith will issue a detailed report on the evidence before leaving his post,
Okay.
whether or not he pursues indictments.
Interesting.
Yeah, Kirschner believes that such a report, even if it doesn't lead to immediate prosecutions, could be politically explosive,
I see.
especially if it reveals efforts to obstruct justice or cover up wrongdoing.
Yeah.
And he also worries that if such a report isn't made public before Trump takes office, the incoming administration might try to bury or even destroy the evidence.
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
It's a scary thought.
That is, yeah. We need transparency in a situation like this.
Absolutely. The public has a right to know, what the investigation uncovered, regardless of the political implications.
Right.
Attorney General Merrick Garland has stated that he would release any special counsel report. So hopefully that provides some reassurance.
Yeah.
But it also raises another question, right? If the evidence is so damning, why not pursue charges now while you still can?
Now, former U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuade offered kind of a possible explanation on MSNBC's The Katie Fang Show.
Okay.
She suggested that Smith could be considering a strategy of dismissing without prejudice, which would essentially pause the cases and allow them to be refiled later.
Interesting. So that raises an important legal question then.
Yeah.
Could the statute of limitations, which sets a time limit for, bringing charges, be considered tolled, essentially paused during Trump's presidency?
If so, these cases could come back to haunt Trump even after he leaves office, even if he wins re-election again in the future.
Right. It'd be a novel legal argument.
Yeah.
And it really highlights, the complex interplay between, the law, politics, and time in this situation.
We haven't even touched on the potential role of the Supreme Court, which could end up having the final say on many of these issues.
Right, of course.
Plus, how will all of this play out in the court of public opinion? We've got a lot more to unpack.
Yeah, we do.
So stay with us as we continue this deep dive into the legal and political labyrinth surrounding Donald Trump.
I'm ready. We were just talking about the possibility that, these cases could be paused, put on hold, and then potentially revived after Trump leaves office.
Right. It's like hitting the pause button on a legal drama and then picking it up again years later.
Yeah.
With a whole new set of circumstances.
Right, exactly.
And that raises another question, what happens if Smith decides to push forward with indictments after Trump is sworn in?
That scenario would plunge us headfirst into some, really uncharted constitutional waters.
Yeah.
We've never had a situation where a sitting president is indicted on federal criminal charges.
Right.
Some argue it's just not possible, that it would, undermine the separation of powers, cripple the executive branch.
But others say that no one, not even the president, is above the law.
Right. It's a fundamental principle of our democracy.
It is.
And it's going to be fascinating to see how that tension, plays out in this case.
Yeah, imagine the Supreme Court having to weigh in on whether a president can be criminally prosecuted while in office.
Oh, that would be
huge.
A landmark case with implications that could, reshape our understanding of presidential immunity and accountability.
For decades.
For decades, yeah.
To come.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about potential pardons, the ticking clock of the special counsel's investigation, and the possibility of impeachment.
Yeah.
And now we're adding another layer of complexity with this question of whether a sitting president can even be indicted.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, but here's something else to think about.
Oh.
The role of the media in all of this.
Oh, yeah.
Because, let's face it, this isn't just a legal battle.
Right.
It's a battle for public opinion.
Yeah, the media is going to play a huge role in shaping how people understand these complex legal and political issues. They'll be reporting on the investigations, the potential impeachment proceedings, the legal arguments, and everything in between.
Right. And how they choose to frame those stories, the language they use, the sources they rely on.
Right.
All of that can have a significant impact on public perception.
And ultimately how this whole saga unfolds.
Exactly.
And let's not forget, we're operating in a media landscape that's, increasingly fragmented and partisan.
Right.
It's more important than ever to be critical consumers of information, to be aware of potential biases and to seek out, diverse perspectives before forming our own opinions.
Yeah, it's about taking responsibility for our own understanding of the issues.
Yeah.
Rather than just passively absorbing whatever information comes our way.
Right.
And it's about engaging in, respectful dialogue with those who hold different views, even if we strongly disagree with them.
Okay, so we've got the legal battles, the potential for, congressional action, and the media's role in shaping public perception. But at the end of the day, this is really a story about the American people, isn't it?
It is. It's about how we as a nation grapple with these fundamental questions of, justice, accountability, and the rule of law.
Right.
And it's about how we navigate these deep political divisions that have been, exposed and exacerbated by these events.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Like, how do you think the American people are processing all of this? Are they engaged? Are they fatigued? Are they just waiting for it all to be over?
Probably a mix of all those things.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that many Americans are feeling overwhelmed, I think, by the constant barrage of news and information.
Right.
Especially in this era of, 2047 media coverage.
That's a lot.
It is. But I think there's also a deep sense of unease out there.
Yeah.
A feeling that something fundamental is at stake here.
And rightly so.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about the potential criminal prosecution of a former president
Right.
who's now back in power.
Back in power, yeah.
We're talking about the possibility of another impeachment, further dividing a country that's already deeply polarized.
That's a lot.
And we're talking about the very foundations of our democracy, like the peaceful transfer of power, the idea that no one is above the law.
Right.
The balance of power between the different branches of government.
I mean, these are all being tested in ways we haven't seen before.
So what does all of this mean for the future of American politics? I mean, it feels like we're at a crossroads.
It does, doesn't it?
A moment of reckoning for our democracy.
And honestly, it's hard to say with any certainty what the long-term consequences will be.
Right.
But one thing is clear, we can't go back to the way things were before.
No.
The norms and traditions that have, guided our political system for generations, they've been eroded.
Yeah.
The trust between the different branches of government and between the government and the people, it's been damaged.
For sure.
We're going to need to find a way to rebuild that trust.
We do.
If we want our democracy to thrive.
Yeah. And I think it starts with recognizing that we're all in this together. Regardless of our political affiliations.
Absolutely.
We need to start listening to each other, try to understand where we're coming from, and find common ground.
It's essential.
It is. It's easy to get caught up in the, day-to-day drama of this saga.
Yeah.
But we need to step back and look at the bigger picture. Like, what are the values we want to uphold as a nation?
Right.
What kind of democracy do we want to leave for future generations?
Those are the questions we need to be asking ourselves.
Yeah.
And they're not easy questions to answer.
Like, not.
But if we can start having those conversations honestly and respectfully, I think we have a chance to emerge from this moment stronger than before.
I hope so.
I do too.
Well, we've talked about a lot of potential outcomes, but one thing seems clear. The coming months and years are going to be incredibly consequential for American democracy.
A lot hangs in the balance.
So much hangs in the balance. The rule of law, the integrity of our institutions, and the very fabric of our society.
This deep dive has given you the knowledge to understand, the complexities of this situation and to see how it fits into the broader context of, American history and politics. Now it's up to you to stay informed, engage in thoughtful discussions, and make your voice heard.
The future of our democracy depends on us.
It really does.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Thanks for having me.
And stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore what all of this might mean for the future of American politics and what we can do to ensure that our democracy remains, strong and vibrant. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Legal battles, potential pardons, the role of Congress and the media. Oh, and the deep political divisions that are really shaping how this whole saga unfolds.
Yeah, and through it all, and one question just keeps coming back to the surface for me.
Okay, yeah.
What does all this mean for the future of American democracy?
Yeah. I mean, it feels like, I don't know, we're at a crossroads. We're facing all these challenges that could fundamentally reshape how we govern ourselves, as a nation.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day drama of it all. But I think we need to sort of step back and consider the long-term consequences.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's look ahead and try to map out some potential scenarios, right? Recognizing, of course, that things could change quickly. There are a lot of moving pieces.
Right, exactly. It's not about predicting the future, obviously, but it's about, understanding the possibilities and what they might mean for our, for our democracy.
Okay, so let's start with Special Counsel Jack Smith, he's racing to finish his investigations before Trump takes office. If he issues reports detailing potential criminal activity, what happens then?
Well, as we've discussed, it could trigger a constitutional crisis, especially if Smith actually tries to move forward with indictments, after Trump is sworn in.
Right, like a sitting president being indicted on federal criminal charges.
Yeah.
I mean, unprecedented.
Totally.
And it would likely end up before the Supreme Court.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine that.
Yeah, the Supreme Court having to, decide whether a president can be criminally prosecuted while in office.
Yeah.
Landmark case. I mean, with implications that could go way beyond Trump himself.
It would force us to confront some really fundamental questions about the balance of power between the different branches of government.
For sure.
And about the very nature of presidential immunity.
Exactly. And don't forget, the potential for Trump to pardon himself or his associates, if they're convicted in the federal election case.
Oh, right. Another, unprecedented move that would raise serious concerns about the rule of law and, the abuse of presidential power.
Yeah, it would set such a dangerous precedent.
Yeah.
Suggesting that the president is, above the law, and that could have really long-lasting consequences for, our democracy.
Okay. So, scenario 1, legal chaos, a constitutional showdown, and, just a deepening of political divisions. Not a rosy picture.
No, not at all. But there are other possibilities, right? What if Smith decides not to issue reports or pursue charges before Trump takes office?
Does that mean that, Trump's off the hook?
Not necessarily. Remember, we talked about the possibility of Smith dismissing the cases without prejudice.
Right.
Essentially pausing them and allowing them to be refiled later.
And then arguing that the statute of limitations was, paused during Trump's presidency, allowing them to be revived after he leaves office.
Exactly. It's a novel legal argument.
It is.
But if it works, it means these cases could come back to haunt Trump even after he leaves office.
So scenario 2, delay justice, potential legal battles down the road, and a lingering cloud of suspicion over Trump's presidency.
Right. It would leave a sense of, unfinished business.
Yeah.
And it would raise questions about whether justice was truly served.
What if Smith's investigations prompt Congress to, launch impeachment proceedings?
Right.
Even if Trump can't be criminally prosecuted while in office.
Yeah, that's another potential scenario and one that could have a really significant impact on Trump's presidency, even if he's ultimately acquitted by the Senate.
It would be incredibly divisive. It would further polarize the country, and it would make it so much harder for our government to, function effectively.
Oh, absolutely. It would dominate the news cycle, consume the attention of lawmakers, and just distract from, all the other pressing issues facing the nation.
So scenario 3, political paralysis, heightened partisan rancor, and a potential erosion of public trust in our institutions. None of these scenarios, are particularly appealing.
No, they're not. And they really highlight the profound challenges facing American democracy in this unprecedented situation.
So what does this all mean for the future of, American politics?
Well, it's hard to say for sure. I think one thing is clear, though. The norms and traditions that have long governed our political system.
Yeah.
They're being tested like never before.
The concept of peaceful transfer of power. The idea that no one is above the law. The importance of an independent judiciary.
They're all under strain.
And the outcome of this saga, it could have lasting implications for how we govern ourselves as a nation.
It really could.
It's a sobering thought, but it's also a call to action. As citizens, we need to be engaged, informed, and, committed to upholding the values that underpin our democracy.
Couldn't agree more. We need to demand accountability from our leaders.
Yeah.
Support a free and independent press and engage in, civil discourse with those who hold different views.
Because ultimately, the future of American democracy depends on us. This deep dive has given you the knowledge to understand the complexities of this situation. And, the potential outcomes. Now it's up to you to stay informed, engage in thoughtful discussions, and make your voice heard.
Absolutely. The stakes couldn't be higher.
Well, thanks for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
And thanks to all of you for listening.